Hey everyone, just wanted to share a tour video of my second Promaster camper van build. Meet Miles Van Camper V2. By the way, if you're interested in my first build, I have a link to that video tour in the description. I sold Miles V1 back in July of 2018. I'd also encourage you to check out my blog, vanlifeoutfitters.com, where I have a ton of posts that go into the build process, including a detailed electrical diagram, plumbing diagram, and a list of everything that I used for this build. Miles is a 2017 Promaster 159-inch non-extended wheelbase. I was super happy with my first build's layout, so if you've seen that tour video, this is going to be really similar. I did make a handful of improvements that I detail toward the end of this video if you want to just skip to that part. Alright, let's take a look at the inside. Across from the slider door on the driver's side is a large galley kitchen. I have a lagoon table mount, and the table stores over the top of the galley when not in use, and you can quickly swing it out of the way to access the sink and stove, and instantly gain a ton more counter space. Also, both the driver and passenger seats swivel around to meet the table as a place to eat, work, or hang out. With the table in its storage position, the layout is open and airy all the way through the van. The galley has a Dometic cooktop and sink combo built into the counter, as well as an espresso machine that's powered from the inverter. There's a ton of storage in this kitchen with full 24-inch deep drawers, each with locking latch in the rear to keep them shut while driving. Above the galley are some small bins to store sponges, soap, miscellaneous items, and a little bit of greenery. There's also a tap for filtered water near the sink. The filter itself is located near the water tank under the bed, so it doesn't take up any space in the galley storage. Throughout the van, I've combined both 12-volt DC and 120-volt AC outlets. Here's one above the galley that also has a switch to turn on the water heater's electric element. The switch has a red LED light to help me remember when that is powered on. Miles has a 33-gallon freshwater tank secured under the bed and a 30-gallon gray water holding tank mounted under the van on the passenger side. I have a really cool insect screen for the slider door. It's stored rolled up at the top of the door. When you want to use it, you unlatch these two latches and it rolls to the floor. Then you just zip up the two sides. There are strong magnets on the front side of the door, so you can simply pull it apart to get in and out, and then when you let go of the flap, it reseals with the magnets. When you're done, you just store it away. I used a marine-style isotemp water heater that has a 5.3-gallon tank, which effectively extends my total freshwater capacity to about 39 gallons. The water heater is connected to the van's coolant lines, so it actually heats the water to 190 degrees or more while you drive. It's a really cool way to heat water with no additional energy automagically. And the tank is well insulated so that it stays hot enough to use for cleaning and showers up to a day or so, depending on ambient temperatures. If you're not driving, you can heat the water with the 120-volt electric element that draws 750 watts from the inverter. Next to the galley is a tall cabinet that houses the Vitrifrigo 5.3 cubic feet refrigerator. It's pretty big for a van build and has a separate freezer compartment. There's a small microwave above the fridge, and the water heater is on the bottom with a little bit of extra storage in front of it. Across from the galley, just behind the slider door on the passenger side, is a small wet bath with a shower and a cassette toilet. I used a retractable Nautilus door that basically disappears into the cassette along the front side. It's amazing to have a hot shower in the van. And it's also pretty nice to have a private place to use the toilet instead of having it pulled out from a drawer or similar. The shower has a soap dispenser, a few hooks, and a mirror. The toilet paper is stored away in this waterproof bin that actually feeds out the roll when opening and rolls it back up when closed. I mounted all my gauges and control panels on the front wall of the wet bath. On the far left is the inverter control panel. Next to that is the Sea Level 2 tank monitor that shows me the levels in percentages for the fresh water, gray water, and propane tanks. Under the bed, there are 3 24-inch deep drawers that we use to store clothes. Each of these has a positive latch to keep them closed when driving or hard braking. In the rear, there's a loft area that is partially enclosed by the bath and refrigerator cabinet walls, with a fixed, full-size bed. The Promaster van is wide enough to fit a standard bed across the van from side to side. Not having to make the bed every day is a huge advantage to me. Also, separating the loft area from the lounge up front with the swivel seats into two distinct living spaces makes the small space in the van feel bigger than it is. Each side of the bed has a storage pocket and some outlets for storing and charging up devices, as well as a dimmable lamp. Up here in the bed loft, there's a max fan which pulls air in or pushes air out at many speeds and provides a nice white noise while sleeping. Up front, just behind the cab, is a standard rooftop AC unit that can be powered off the inverter for short periods of time, but is normally used only when connected to shore power. I also have a Propex furnace that runs off propane located just behind the driver's seat for camping in cold climates. Taking a look on the outside, on the rear, I've engineered a bike rack that actually swings out of the way without having to take the bikes off, so you can open up the back doors and get to the storage there. It's a combo of the Yakima backswing and a cheap bike rack off Amazon that I wrote a blog post about. When you open up the back doors, you have access to even more storage. There are 3 large drawers on the passenger side and a deep storage bin on the driver's side that goes the entire width of the bed. This is great for larger items like an inflatable paddleboard or other gear. Below that storage bin is the AC and DC load center. I also installed an outdoor shower here that can be used to wash off while outside, and it has this hook for the shower head on the door. On the driver's side, I have the freshwater fill and a connection for city water here, and a standard 30 amp shore power connection right next to it. Below all of that, I have this remote fill for the propane tank, which is actually tucked away underneath the van, just in front of the rear axle. This remote fill kit allows you to fill up the tank from the side of the van, so you don't have to crawl underneath there. The propane tank has a built-in gauge that sends its signal to the tank monitoring system, so I can keep an eye on how much propane we have. The only 2 propane appliances in the van are the cooktop and the Propex furnace. Over on the passenger side, behind the slider, I have an outdoor outlet, which can be handy when camping, and this thing next to it's actually the vent for the gray water tank. Under the van, near the slider door, is the gray water tank with a standard 3-inch dump valve. I store the sewer hose for dumping the tank on the bike rack in this storage tube. The electrical system, much of which is underneath the bed platform, is powered by 2 200 amp hour batteries. These are charged 3 ways: by the alternator when driving, through the 200 watts of solar on the roof, and also when connected to shore power. I have a 2,000 watt inverter that can surge up to 6,000 watts to power all the AC outlets in the van and the appliances like the microwave. With this setup, we can easily go many days without a recharge, and driving just a few hours can top everything up. Okay, so what's different between this build and the first one? Looks the same? Indeed, as I said, I was super happy with the layout and design of Miles version 1, but I did make some improvements in this new build. First, I used a different kind of flooring. It's a heavy-duty marine vinyl that comes in a sheet called Lawn Seal. In Miles 1, I used vinyl tiles which looked great, but had tiny gaps between them. I prefer the sheet vinyl because it's easier to keep clean, and I like the way the stripes in the flooring accentuate the sight lines of the van interior. In my first build, I used a propane-fired, on-demand water heater. In this new build, I swapped that out for an Isotemp Spa 15L. This one has a 5.3 gallon tank and is heated automatically while driving using the engine coolant, and can also heat water with an electric element when you're not driving. This has many advantages. You save water by not waiting for the water heater to fire up. Because it has a tank, I've added to my total freshwater storage, and I don't need to turn the faucets on high flow in order to trigger the on-demand water heater. Also, the coolant heats the water to well above the temperature you'd use at the sink or shower, and then uses a thermostatic mixing valve to add in non-heated water at the outlet to bring the temp down to a usable temperature. This trick nearly doubles the usable hot water from the tank. Just 20 to 30 minutes of driving will heat the water up, and it stays warm enough to use for up to a day in my testing. I wrote a blog post about this heater and its installation. I upgraded the battery capacity from 300 amp hours of AGM batteries to 400 amp hours, and also upgraded the inverter from an 1800 watt to a 2000 watt with a 6000 watt surge or start capacity. These upgrades give me a bit more time off the grid and allow me to run the air conditioner off the inverter for short periods of time if necessary. I also upgraded the solar charge controller to an MPPT type, which is a bit more efficient than the PWM type I used in Miles 1. A small upgrade is combining the 12-volt DC and 120-volt AC power outlets into one switch plate. I have a bunch of these combos throughout the van, and I just think it looks a little bit nicer to have them together rather than two separate boxes. I used a slightly smaller refrigerator, but one that still has a separate freezer compartment. This made space to add a microwave above the fridge, which is very handy. Another small but meaningful upgrade is the toilet paper storage in the wet bath. We would often forget to move the toilet paper from the bath when showering in the first build, and that had, well, predictable results. I love the clever design of this waterproof TP holder that rolls the paper in and out for you. I also engineered a swing-away bike rack as shown earlier so that I can easily access the rear storage without removing the bikes from their rack. I wrote a blog post about that as well. That's all, folks. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in more videos, I'd love to hear your thoughts on exactly what you'd like to see. So feel free to leave some comments about that below.